The investment of time and helping people and giving your honest opinion, that's what they're looking for. So if you treat people a certain way, the money and the success will follow. I think people can easily pick up on somebody who just wants to make a sale and that's their focus. You can sense that about people.
Hey, welcome back to the Real Estate Excellence Podcast, the show that brings you inside the minds of the most elite professionals in the real estate industry. Every week, we dive deep into top performers who are not just crushing it in their markets, but are also raising the bar for what it means to truly serve clients at the highest level. Today's guest is the definition of long-term excellence, a seasoned pro with decades of success in one of Florida's most competitive markets with a reputation built on trust, results, repeat clients. This industry leader knows how to thrive through the market shifts, build lasting relationships, and deliver outcomes that consistently exceed expectations. You're about to hear from someone who embodies what it means to be client-focused, community-rooted, and results-driven. A true example of real estate excellence. Let's welcome Maria Raymer to the show.
Hi.
Hey. Appreciate you coming down.
Yeah.
Finally, I got you here.
Yes,
I
did.
closed the door so you can't escape.
Stays off, they say.
Yeah. Obviously, I've been watching your business for years and your numbers, and you're out there and you're doing things. And it's an honor to have you on today. And I hope for our listeners, they're going to get something out of this because I think you have a lot to share.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd love to.
So I always kick off the easy one. What's young Maria, 18, 19, 20 years old? What are you thinking about doing as a career? Was real estate something that was in the family, or tell us where you were at?
Yeah, so like most 18-year-olds, I think I was confused about what I wanted to do. Real estate initially wasn't something I was thinking of. Of course, I thought you have to, get your 4-year college degree to do or be anything, and I started college.
I'm going to have you just pull that mic actually over. I apologize for that. Pull it over like I have mine, about 6 or 8 inches. Yeah.
There?
Yeah, you're good. Yeah, good.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, you're fine. Go ahead.
So, like anybody at 18 years old, you're wondering like what you're going to do, and thinking that college might have been a good path, get that 4-year degree. And I started down that road and stopped short of, getting that degree, and decided to go into real estate. A couple of people in the family had suggested it and thought I might be good at it. And I guess my first question was, as a young person, okay, so I go into real estate, what is it they need me for? Like, what do I do? Like,
right.
As an agent, like, how do I sell that? Like, why do they need me? And so once I understood, like, that they need you and why they need you, I thought, okay, this is something I can get behind. This is something I think I can educate people on and be successful at in time.
From the standpoint of what the buyers and sellers need your professionalism from.
Correct.
So
Yes.
We have a lot of amazingly sub 30-year-old agents that are doing really well. I was just thinking of Willie with Compass. He actually started, but he didn't really start to blossom. It took him 6 or 7 years to do it. At that time, how old? What leads you to your first brokerage?
So, like I said, a couple of family members suggested it. I switched courses, got out of the college thing I was doing and started taking real estate courses. Got my license and started with ERA out of Orange Park. And I think I was living out there at the time, and that maybe was the reason why I went with that company. But, I really loved it just like from the beginning. Like,
right.
I was super excited about it, and I felt that I didn't have to compromise my life. Like, I could still have a family and I could still have a balance in my life with this type of career. And I liked that there were no limits on how successful I could be. Like, the harder I worked, the more money I made.
Right.
And that resonates, with me, because I think it's like that in life. If you get in a job where no matter how hard you work, you can really be kept down and not go to like hit the stars, I would lose interest in something like that.
Yeah. The other people you mentioned were in your family that said, hey, maybe you should look into real estate. Were they in real estate themselves?
So my mom was one, and she was not in real estate. My sister-in-law was one, and she was in real estate.
Okay.
And so she was the one who helped me understand like what the need is for a real estate agent. How do you explain that to people that this is something they need, and what she did for them to help them, things that they wouldn't know or couldn't do by themselves as easily. And so yes, it was one family member in the business. And I mean, initially my thought was I'd go to pharmacy school. And so that was one path I had considered. And really the only other path, the next thing was real estate.
Yeah. Is she local, your sister-in-law?
She's not.
She wasn't local at the time?
She was local at the time. This is many years ago.
Right, right,
Going
right.
back a long time ago.
Well, because I want you to kind of, if you can express across, there is a lot of young people, but even someone who's in a transition from another career, you're getting started. Because like I said, most people, that question that you asked, what is it actually, real estate agent, what do they actually do? Why do they buyers and sellers need you or need that professional? And you go and take the test, and I think there's a lot of agents who even take the test and still don't know the answer to your question that you had at the time.
100%, because the licensing process does not teach you real world application of real estate at all. In fact, pretty much everything you learn in that you would not use out there.
Right.
So you learn it as you go, I guess. Starting in it so young, it was a bit of a challenge for me because, most people, especially back then, almost 30 years ago, who owned a house, they were much older than I was. So were they going to take direction and advice from this, 19, 20-year-old person?
Right.
That was difficult, but, you had to convince them of what you could do for them. And, there's very basic things like sales come together better when you have someone in the middle, a mediator, pulling both sides together, because the seller and buyer are at opposite ends of the spectrum. They have opposite goals. And your job as an agent is to bring them to the middle, like help get them to the place where they can make an agreement that does work for everybody. And as an owner, how can you be that? You cannot be that unbiased person, or you cannot be that person that can mediate that transaction, because you have a lot of, emotional value tied into.
Well, there's some agents
home.
that put some emotions in some of our deals.
Well, of course we do. We do. We get pretty fired up, in fact. But heart value in the home is what I mean. Memories, raising your family. Sometimes it's difficult to put a price on a house that you have so much emotional history and value tied up in. It's not an investment to them. It's their home. And so when you're pricing it, just that one aspect alone is very difficult for an owner to separate. Like, I sanded these floors by hand, and they're beautiful floors, and that's a wonderful thing. But it's very hard to translate that to a buyer and why they should pay more.
Than the house up the street.
Right.
So you go to ERA. Are you able to latch on to someone, or was your sister-in-law working there at the time?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you kind of threw out the age, you were 19, 20 years old. How do you ramp up that maturity, which was what you were kind of leading to? You're dealing with buyers of homes that are older. They're looking at this 20-year-old young lady and saying, does she know what she's doing?
Right.
How do you attack that learning curve or that maturity curve to come across in a professional way?
So for me, and this is different than today because so many people work at home, right? And I think it's a big miss on their part, right? Young people getting started in our industry. I mean, the synergy of working with other professionals is so important. I was in that office every day. I treated it like a 9-to-5 job. Nobody made me do that. But I did that because I wanted to talk to those older, seasoned agents who had been doing it and learn everything I could. And, fortunately, they were great people. They were good mentors. They were people willing to share, what they did. So I wanted to learn, and I did learn, and I watched them. And I was there every day to listen. What's happening in the office? How is a phone call handled? And I was just absorbing all that information. And so to me, I think it's a really important thing to be in an active office with other people, and especially seasoned people. Like I see a lot of young people, they'll jump on a team, but they're in there with all these other young people, and so they don't have as much to contribute.
Young in the business, we'll say.
Yeah,
not necessarily
young,
all of them are age young, but
right.
new in the business.
Young and new in the business.
Yeah.
Less experience. And then they're surrounding themselves with other people who are in that same boat. So how much can you really learn? And then if the lead on that team has only been selling real estate 5 or 10 years themselves, there's only so much wisdom they could really impart, So I think it's important to be in an office where it's active and there's other seasoned agents where you can learn from those people. That's how I did it.
Yeah. Were you a rookie of the year type success early, or did you?
Yeah, no, I mean, like out of the gate, like within the first year, I was doing well.
Right.
And the standards were different. Price points were different back then. The number of sales you would do in a year. Like if you were $1 million producer, that was like a big deal.
Yeah.
But the prices of houses were so much less. People back then sold their houses every 5 and 10 years, not every 2 to 3 years. So you didn't have those numbers of, doing 5 or 10 closings a month. That just was not a reality in that day and time.
Right.
But you just kind of cut your teeth and get your experience. But yes, I would be rookie of the year. I would be, that person that made it to that $1 million club pretty early on, working diligently.
So tell us how you got some of your first deals. And then obviously, and then take it to today. Say someone's starting today and might be listening to the show who's just getting started, if maybe even pre-licensing, but they're just getting started. What you would recommend if they were, you were tutoring them?
So, again, there's big differences. Like floor was very effective. Floor agents were very effective in that time because we were working out of MLS books. We didn't have the computer.
Right.
So those, skills of getting started back then don't really apply to today. So working floor, taking calls, for a certain part of the day. For those of you out there who don't know what floor is, it would be like you would work that front desk. You don't get paid to do it, but you would be the one who'd answer the calls, and then the listings that they're calling on you could show and sell. So that would be kind of how I started getting sales. Of course, and this is still true today, friends, family, just getting all the deals you can, listening to people who were talking about selling a property, and then maybe they're in the grocery store, maybe they're at the coffee shop, and you would just say, oh, I overheard your conversation. If you ever need an agent, here's my card. Door knocking was a big thing. You don't see that as much today, but that is also an effective tool, I think, even today, especially in your own neighborhood, because I think you get to go in there and say, hey, I'm your neighbor. I live down the street. Who's going to be mean to their neighbor, right? I saw your sign go up. You may not be looking to, find an agent now, but if you get to that place, here's my card.
Well, we live in a fortunate area, especially with all these planned urban developments, that when someone moves in, they generally are telling their friends and family, oh, you need to move into this neighborhood too.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
I mean, word of mouth is really important. But, also getting out there where you're in front of people. And, some people do it by clubs, we call it networking. So different things that people can do. Sometimes it's, your gym or places like that. And wherever you have an audience, per se, like there's a lot of people there, is an opportunity to meet people and tell them what you do.
What would you say to someone who's a little shy to that in the get over? Because my thought is, real estate's actually a topic that a lot of people like to talk about. It's very neutral. It's not like politics or religion or anything like that. And to go and just say, "Hey, I'm a real estate agent," or let alone "What do you do for a living?" is a common question when two people meet, because they must do something. So they're going to ask that question just to create a conversation. So if you're in the gym, to go work out next to somebody and say, hey, how you doing? A lot of times that's all it takes.
Sure. How long have you lived over here? And, it just, a conversation develops. But I was very, very shy. I still have a little bit of that.
That's why you didn't come in for 2 years.
That's right. So that was definitely a part of my personality.
Yeah.
But, to win people over, I think to go back to your earlier question is, I think people have to know you care. You have to be honest and sincere. They have to know that you're just not in it for the sale and to make money. Sure, that's the end result, but the investment of time and helping people and giving your honest opinion, that's what they're looking for. So if you treat people a certain way, the money and the success will follow. I think people can easily pick up on somebody who just wants to make a sale, and that's their focus. You can sense that about people. So I think when I would talk to people, even though I was, young, starting in the business at that time, I think I won them over with the fact that, I would be honest and treat them well. And I really did train myself up well with, like I said, shadowing and looking at what other people were doing, those successful people, and emulating that behavior. And in addition to that, if you're with a decent sized company, you can ride on the coattails of their successes as, hey, our group, our company, we're the biggest real estate company in the world, whatever it is. And you have a lot of that you could ride on when you don't have your own personal experiences. Like, I have a team, so I have agents that work under me. They ride off my experiences. And the truth is that they're taught the same way that I do business. And in addition to that, I'm involved in their sales. So they are getting me, even if they're
not face to face with you.
Correct,
Yeah.
even if they're working with someone on my team.
Right.
But my people, of course, work directly with me. I don't meet with people and then hand them off to someone on the team.
Mentioning the branding part of it, obviously you've been with Remax for many years now, but really you've created your own Maria Raymer team.
Right.
That's you. You could go to another brokerage and I don't think would skip a step, as far as your production and so forth. Would you agree? And the name today versus you remember growing up, we all can remember the Century 21 guys wearing the yellow jackets, or Remax with their balloon, right?
Right.
That was the thing. But I don't believe that branding is out there anymore as far as the national brokerage. Would you agree?
I do agree in some aspects that most of my clients are repeat and referral business, right? Like, I track that every year, and I'm probably 70-30 that, past customers, friends, family, whoever is referring me, that's the bulk of my business. And so, to your point, if I could take and move anywhere, I would still take that client base with me because I've built that trust and they're looking to work with me wherever I am, whatever I'm doing.
Yeah.
However, that 30% comes from outside of that. And some of that, for example, I'm with Remax. So it might be through the Remax network that I get a referral or a lead that way that I would not have otherwise. It might be because people who have had experiences with Remax in other areas and had a good experience, they tend to take that where they go, and they might seek a Remax agent to help them, hoping to have that same experience in that different place. And I know that because I ask people that question. Why did you call me? How did you hear about me? And, I sold my house in Virginia with a Remax agent. They were great. So I knew when I sold this one, I'd want to work with Remax.
Right.
So I get so many of those a year.
Do you think it's because of your longevity in there, talking to someone who might be with a bigger brokerage, sort of get started? The fact that probably you've been with Remax for so long that your name is fairly large because you've been there so long, and with high numbers and so forth and reputation, I imagine they invite you to different events or whatever, and you get to meet other agents. But because if you get in the line, you eventually get to the front.
Right.
And you're way out in front of the line because obviously we know the average agent doesn't stay with their brokerage 20-some years.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Now it's like if you, in any job, stay there 2 or 3 years, it seems like, with the up and coming generation, it's, they just move on, and, job hopping is, it just, coming up from where I did, you didn't do that. You stayed with the same company, the same job. It's different now. But, for me, I always look at the numbers at the end of the year. And if the business that I get as a result directly of being with the company that I'm with outweighs the cost that I pay to be with that company, then it makes sense.
Right.
And every year, for the most part, the math adds up. And when the math doesn't add up, that's when you start thinking about other options, right?
One of the biggest topics agents at least deal with, we're talking about the hopping and, which brokerage they should go to.
Yeah.
We know it comes down to the split. And obviously you could take your business to, these virtual brokerages or whatever, where the split is a lot less and so forth. But for someone really getting their business started, like you said, coming into the office, having that structure, a lot of people need that. Most people, I would think we would put on the majority need that. There's some people that will be successful no matter what they do. They just figure it out. But coming in the office because they don't really know the business or the answer to that question you had at the beginning. What does the buyer and seller really need me for, right? I think that's brilliant, actually. But what advice would you give to an agent who, maybe feels like they're stale, maybe they're doing the business, but it's not really growing for them, and maybe they've hit a lid when it comes to, teaming up with a brokerage? What should be some of the criteria they should be looking at first before actually getting to the dollar?
I think how closely you're going to work with somebody that would be your mentor, a top producer, somebody with experience, and, like I said, a high volume producer, somebody who can help you learn. But I also think that every time you make a move, you lose momentum. I mean, my name is probably synonymous with RE/MAX because I have been there so long. So it allows me to get that 70% of the work, that personal referral, and that other 30% that they provide. And I think if you continue to move or you don't go with a company who can help grow your business in that way, you lose that extra, and that 30%, that's a lot. It's a big deal. But I just think longevity is important. And everybody's looking for that best split, but you earn your wings, you earn your keep. You don't start out at the best and top splits, so you work your way up and you get higher splits and you make more money, but you can still do that where you are without moving all over the place to try to figure things out. But I know some of these super teams, I've talked to some of the agents and they kind of get lost in that shuffle. They're running these low-end leads, because they're paying a bunch of money to get these Zillow leads, and a lot of them aren't great. And these, new agents are running crazy all over town and spending time and money on gas and whatever to chase leads that really aren't very high-priced or viable. And I think they get burned out real quick, and I think that's why we have such a high turnover in the industry. I think if they had gone for quality instead of quantity, they might have built a better foundation, which would have allowed them to stay and see the fruit of their labor over time. But it doesn't happen overnight. For some people you could get going pretty quick, but you got to do the work. Like, I worked 6 and 7 days a week and many hours a day. I put in the time. It was not easy to get to where I am and placing, multiple years in the top 1% of production in the country. And I think people look at that and think, that's what I want. But if they would look at the work I did to get there, delivering pumpkins, around Halloween with my card on them at every door, and flag days, holidays, putting flags with my card and knocking on doors and calling on for sale by owners. And, there was a lot of work involved. But as you get into the business, more people know you, and you don't have to do all the legwork. Then it switches and it starts coming to you. But in the beginning, you have to seed into your business, not just with money, but with time, lots of time. Not even a 40-hour-a-week job, 50 and 60-hour-a-week job. And people go into it thinking, it's so easy and I could do it part-time. It's not an accurate statement, and they usually will not make it if they do that. And think about the seller. Here they're interviewing, making the most important decision they can make, or a buyer buying or selling property. It's a big deal, for them. And do you think they want to hire somebody who's just kind of half in, half out? Somebody, you know what I mean? They want to know you're all in, even if you don't have 10 years experience. Be all in, and they pick up on that, and they will hire you because they think you're going to fight for it. They want to know you're hungry.
I would imagine over the years you have done different things. You mentioned delivering pumpkins and all that kind of stuff. Tell us 2 or 3 different campaigns, I guess if you want to call it. The pumpkins were a campaign. Some different things you've done over the years, and which one was the most successful that you continue to do today?
I don't know that I continue to do any of the same things today because technology is evolving and we're on that boat now. But in addition to that, again, what you need to do, what you should do when you're a new agent is different than when you get to where I'm at. You don't have to cultivate the business the same way because people now are coming to you. So that time that you used to spend cultivating the business, you actually spend in the business, doing the business. And so that part's different. Farming, I think, was really effective and still can be effective. I think you should do it in your neighborhood, though. I think that's a highly effective thing. And most people, to your point, we live in these subdivisions. It's rare that someone lives on a 1 acre tract in the middle of nowhere, right? Like, they live in a neighborhood.
They're within range, but yeah.
Typically, they're in a neighborhood.
Yeah.
And if they are, that's just a great thing, because start farming where people know you and where you can, like I said, say I'm your neighbor when their for sale by owner sign goes up.
Right.
Get involved in the HOA so you hear about people, you know, wanting to buy and sell in the area. I mean, so there's different things you can do, but farming the area you live in, I think, is a big deal. And I think it's helpful for especially young new agents
Getting
in
started.
the business
Yeah.
getting started to farm their neighborhood where people know them.
I agree with you there. I don't think enough agents are doing it. I mean, of you know, your episode 291, I've had over 270 agents on, and no one. Well, the only person that really has a really good story was Patty Ketchum. I call her Miss Real Estate Florida, Miss Florida Real Estate, but farming a neighborhood and doing it consistently over and over and over again. I think Leah Mia Escape did tell a story. She started farming. That's how she got going. She farmed, but it took obviously, you know, 5 or 6 months before it started to grab on and type of thing. What are some of the, if you're mentoring some new agents right now, obviously you'd say, okay, what neighborhood you live in? What do we need to do there? We need to make you that neighborhood expert.
Right.
What are some things where you do? Some mailers, postcards, obviously knock on doors. What are some of the things, some of the tactics that you use?
Mailers, postcards, like I said, maybe be involved with the HOA, driving by and then dropping by when you see cars in the driveway or a time of day you think they might be home. If they have a sign out that they're selling their house and they're not listed with a company, I mean, that's like saying, I need your help.
Mm-hmm.
To me, I see a for sale by owner sign, it's I need your help. And even today, if I saw one, I would call on it.
Right.
But they need to understand why they need your help. That's the thing. They think they can do it on their own, and I'm not saying they can't. And they may have had some real estate experience even. But the reality is, if you aren't doing this every single day, you're not in the know, you don't have the connections, you don't have the ability to market and advertise the same way we do and get that traction. So I think that's super important. Another thing I'm always very surprised at is people that don't spend money from day one with some kind of contact management system. It's called CRM, but there's a lot of different platforms out there. I use Lofty, but there's a lot of different platforms. And it has my entire client base. And from decades of selling real estate, they're all in there. I stay in touch. I send a newsletter every quarter. You don't want to inundate people with email, phone calls, texts. People get aggravated. They're all busy. So pace yourself with follow-up with things like that, you know. So if it's a past customer, you don't want to be calling them every week. Just every quarter, maybe send out a newsletter. But, you know, those sales today are your future business tomorrow, and people aren't staying in touch with them. It's just lost business because people can forget you, and, you know, it's best to stay in touch. But, yeah, contact management. And
with technology, as you mentioned earlier, getting better and better with AI, it could start to predict who you might want to lean on a little bit more.
Sure, yeah.
Who you might actually want to make a phone call instead of just send the newsletter.
Right.
Because how long they've been in the home, and if you have all that information, their family, their kids, how old they are, AI is able to pick that stuff up and say, hey, that person might be the person you should call today.
Yeah, it's true. And then some of these contact management platforms, once the email is in there, they have a way to monitor if they're actually looking in real estate, you know, places online.
Other platforms.
Yeah, and they can alert you like, this person was actively looking. So, I mean, it's all kind of tied together. Yeah.
And would you agree, because I agree with 100% of what you're saying. I'm thinking of someone who would disagree what they might say. Oh, they won't open my newsletter every time. They don't have to open your newsletter.
See your name.
All they have to do is see Maria, and they go, okay, it's Maria. I'm not really interested in real estate right now. I know Maria. I like her, so I'm not going to unsubscribe. But I'm just not going to read the email right now because I just don't have time. Yeah.
You know, it's the same theory with mail-outs and postcards, right? Like, they may not even look or read it, but as it's on its way to the trash from the mailbox, they see your name.
Yes.
And it's print it on their mind.
Right.
And, and I wouldn't get sensitive about people who unsubscribe. It doesn't mean they don't like you and they wouldn't use you again. They just don't like extra email, even if you're not crazy about sending, emails every other day, right? Like
right.
I told you, I specifically don't stay in touch too often with past clients because it can be annoying, those emails. And holiday emails, I mean, people have got to stop with that. It's gotten a little crazy.
Yeah.
And at first, I did it too. I had a Thanksgiving post. I had a Christmas. People all know it's the holiday. They don't necessarily need to hear from their real estate agent. But
you're better off actually sending them a physical card.
Yes.
They'll appreciate that than the email.
They absolutely like the card, but you're just junking up their email.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know about you, but tell me, after a holiday, we come back and we got 25 emails. Happy 4th of July. Happy 4th of July. Do I need that? No, I got to go through and delete all those. So your customers, they feel the same way. Put yourself in their shoes. How often would you want to hear from them if it were the other way around? And so I think we have to be really careful with how much we stay in touch. A personal phone call from time to time, like you said, a card in the mail. They do appreciate those kind of things. And useful information. Quarterly emails, that's useful information for people if you make it a good thing. Like, okay, there's this in there and there's that in there. There's real estate news in there. You might put the pending and active and sold sales in their neighborhood with the last few months. People like that stuff.
I'm just going to adjust this camera just a little bit. There we go. Okay, good. Always got to make room for reels. Which made me lose my train of thought with my next question, because I had my next question right up there.
We were talking about just staying in touch with people.
Yeah, staying in touch with. Yeah, I'm going to go with this question I've written down actually, because that'll bring that one back.
Yeah.
Actually, so what I did is I use ChatGPT for everything. It knows my show. Every transcript's uploaded.
Yeah,
everything is created from it. So all your bio, I went through all your social media and took out your bio from your LinkedIn, the bio you sent me, and there was a bio, I think, on your website. I think so. I throw all that in there and say, okay, let's create the intro.
That's cool. And then it comes up with your questions.
It builds, and it gives me a couple questions here. But the one thing I've been doing recently too, I said, well, what's 3 things that make Maria unique and exceptional based off your bios? Now, I don't know if it's going online and looking at your LinkedIn too or whatever, but it's got your bios. And this is what it said. Unmatched longevity with consistent top performance. 30 years in the industry, ranking top 1% nationally, regionally. Long-term success isn't just experience, but sustained excellence. Number 2, client-first philosophy rooted in community. Obviously, being from the area for over 40 years, referral and repeat business. I'm going to go back to that one and ask a question on that. And number 3 was elite-level negotiation and personalization. So 2 and 3 give me a couple good questions to ask you. Obviously, rooted in community. It took that from your bio.
Yeah.
And you do the local TV station to get across your professionalism, educate people on the industry, what's going on locally and so forth. Tell us about some things maybe you've done in the past, but maybe you're still doing, but what agents should do to get themselves out there, which it seems is what you're kind of leading to, or get into the community and get involved. What are some things that you've done?
I mean, when you have school-age kids, for example, you could sponsor their team. So you could be involved meeting parents and doing things that way to increase your business, but also helping your community. And, if you're putting a banner up at your kid's football game, you contributed. So you've helped them from a community level. Certain charities, Salzbacher is an excellent charity here locally. They help battered women, homeless vets. It's a great organization. REMAX is very tied into the Children's Miracle Network, so a portion of all my commissions, every single closing I have goes, to that, and it goes here for local community resources. So I think it's super important to give back to the community that you live in. As far as networking and, things like that, you could also do it through your church. You could do it through charity work and helping there and getting to know people. And then, of course, when they have a real estate need, they might think of you. So there's a lot of ways. Because
I think a lot of people, they can see the Miracle Network because they can see that logo, right? And you were talking about it. But by being involved in it over time, and let alone not just throwing a check, but going to their events, or whether it's a gala or whatever it might be, you got like-minded people in the room together.
Sure,
right?
yeah.
You all are focused on this particular charity, and because you're like-minded, there's a natural tendency to network.
Of course, yeah, absolutely. And Remax is really good about saying, oh, we're, going to be serving lunches, we're going to be doing this, we're going to be, for Children's Miracle Network and things like that. But also another aspect of community, and I don't think people think about it, is, and it's a huge thing with me, support local. Support local. I mean, it's really a big deal. Go to a local restaurant. Stop going to the chain corporate restaurants. Shop at your local boutique, flower shop, coffee shop. Support local, because it's where we live, and those businesses thriving, they help all of us. And if you're a regular in your local restaurant, sandwich shop, they start to get to know you, you start to get to know them,
right?
And then you connect on another level, and again, maybe they think of real estate, they give you a call. But that's not the first thought I have when I do those things. Like, I really believe in that philosophy of supporting local and community. That's the first thought I have. The other things are a benefit after that comes.
Well, I think it goes back to the longevity part of it. If it's something you're passionate about, you like going down there, if you like it and you enjoy going down there, you're going to be there for a long time. It will eventually bear fruit, just like if you're in real estate long enough, eventually enough people are going to realize you're doing real estate. Now,
right.
If you're able to financially do it, depending on what speed you're moving at and how much work you're putting in each day, it'll grow faster. But
right.
You've got to look at it as a long-term investment,
sure.
Which... This is a question I like to ask is, do you feel most real estate agents, which I think we talked about at the beginning of the show, are definitely less than 5 years in the business? I think we took the average that's out there right now. So definitely less than 10. Those first year to fifth year really aren't looking at it long term. They're more chasing the 60 to 90 days. And you really don't start turning your business until you start looking at this long-term investing and following up on your clients, right? How important it is. Well, you might not do another transaction with that person, and they might not even refer you for 5 or 6 years.
That's right, yeah.
You don't know.
Right.
But you've got to keep building the blocks of the business.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's how you get sustained referrals over time. That's how you get to the point where you're at 70% referred business. And it's important because they're the most loyal people, because they've worked with you, they know of you, they're going to be your best customers. They trust you already. Building trust is half the equation with
right.
real estate, because when you first meet someone and they don't know you, you don't know them, people typically assume the worst, things aren't going to go so well, and you're really trying to get them out of that. But how do you do that? Well, time and effort. It doesn't come the first day you sit down with them. You build the trust over the transaction, and then hopefully things go very smoothly. And the more deals you do, the more experience you have, the smoother the transaction, and the less mistakes you have and the less problems you have. And if you've had the problem before, you know your way around it already. So speaking to like a seller or buyer, I mean, for me, with my level of experience, that's how I kind of assure them, even if they've never worked with me before, look, I got here to this level by doing these things. And so that helps build in the trust. And yes, as a long-term agent, you could say something like that, but new in the business, it's not as easy.
Yeah.
So you just have to show them, each step of the way that you're accountable.
Because number 3 there was, we'll talk about negotiation and tactics there, but personalization. Think of your last transaction you just completed maybe in the last week or whatever and closed, what happened in the 30, 45 days, or who knows, however long you spent with them, in that transaction, versus Maria, getting her first 10 transactions, when you were 21 years old, and the personalization of, because you said you're shy.
Yeah.
So typically you aren't asking those, I call them corny questions. It's just having rapport with somebody, talking about whatever. Hey, what do your kids do? Whatever, those type of questions that aren't really pertinent to the sale necessarily, versus like how much money you have, what do you do for a living, can you afford this house? Those are the vital questions. But those other ones that personalize the transaction, which obviously it's part of the building blocks of the personalization, of the longevity of them liking you.
Sure.
Tell us a little bit of how you evolved, because you were a young person, in 30 years in the business, and how you have evolved in how you, obviously today, it's like riding a bike. You probably don't even think about it. Right. But I imagine if you sit back right now and look, how did you handle those first transactions to how you're handling the transactions today, from you and your personal rapport and personalization and building those relationships?
Well, I mean, the biggest change has been technology. So everything is technology driven. So when you're in the business a long time, if you don't change with the times, whether you just started 5 years in, 10, you got to evolve. You have to evolve to the time that you're in. And so the way I did those transactions are completely different. Like, everything was written by hand. I had folders. I wrote everything down. And, now it's all logged into a computer. And, so...
We didn't have email. We didn't have text messages.
Yeah, so
you might have had a pager.
Yeah, I might have had a pager. But technology has been the biggest change, and the sales are more seamless now. It's harder to forget a step because we have it all in the system, right? So, but I think the biggest difference between then and now and how I handle the sale is technology has made it easier to do a higher volume of business without losing personal service with the client. That communication. And I think that's really important, because you can lose that personal service. You can stop calling them every week when you have their house listed and giving them updates and just assume that sending an email is enough. It's not. So you want to stay engaged with people. But I've always been that person. I've always been that person that I don't let the day go by without a phone call back. I mean, obviously, if it comes in at 10 o'clock at night, it's going to
call you in the morning.
If it's during a typical business day for me, I'm going to text them, call them back. I always follow up. And there's just things, I think, that make you successful as a person in life in general. And that's one of those things, is communication skills. And in our industry, it's extremely important to be a good communicator. And people have to really believe and understand that you're on their side. And it's hard to do, because you're trying to navigate what is best for them to get to the closing table, right? But sometimes that can be misconstrued as, oh, you're more on their side. And really, you're just trying to mediate the issues that can come up.
Right.
Because their end goal is, look, I could start fighting with the other agent and those buyers on every little thing you don't like, but is that going to be a problem for you if you don't get to the closing table? If you've already, bought your next house and you can't move into it? So, I think perspective, somebody else being involved and handling it and tamp down the situation to make sure everybody gets to closing without too much compromise, and never forgetting who your loyalty is with, who you're working for. If you are representing, in this case, a single agent as the owner's agent, which is different than the transactional agent, which you represent the transaction. So that's different, and there's different capacities that we work in. I typically work as a single agent because I want to represent and work hard for the person I'm with. I want all agents and everything to be with them and for them. So for me personally, I work as a single agent always, unless I happen to be working with both sides. Then you have to be a transaction agent. Yeah. But I do typically go that way.
Some of the coffee shop talk, if you want to call it, bar talk, whatever. You've done enough transactions. You've seen what happens, how to handle it. I'd imagine stuff, as we know, every transaction's different. There's another curveball.
Right.
You're just reading another picture. You've done enough times that you've hit enough curveballs that we'll get through it.
Right.
There's a thing, but sometimes you have that agent on the other end who maybe is doing it part-time, maybe is not very experienced, or as we were talking about earlier, the emotions. They start getting emotional instead of being that person who, the mediator, as you've mentioned several times. I got someone who wants to sell. I got someone who wants to buy. How can we get them to the table?
Right.
And how we work through this. Because obviously we're not talking about any individual person here right now.
Right.
What advice would you give to some of those agents who've gotten a curveball, and they get all worked up?
Yes.
What should they do before they make the next call, send the next email, to be the professional, level-headed person that's done it 1,000 times?
Yeah.
What are some thoughts that they should be having, and what advice would you give them?
Well, it's interesting you bring that up, because it is an issue out there, especially when the business is booming. Right now, it's a slower year in real estate, so you don't see it as often, but You see a bunch of new people come in the business. They really don't know what they're doing yet, but they act like they do. They're not willing to take direction. They know they're working with a seasoned agent, but they're going to try to push back and tell you what to do and how to do it, and just have a bad attitude, or a demanding attitude, or a nasty attitude. And yeah, they don't work for me. I don't work for them. But at the end of the day, we're trying to do the best by the people we are working for, and the best for them is to get them to the closing. That is always the objective. And if you're going to create, an adversarial situation with the agent you're working with, it's not for the benefit of your customer. It's not for the benefit of getting them to closing. So I think it's really important to kind of keep your cool. Don't get all worked up about it. Think your way through it before you react. Like you said, before you send the nasty email or text or go off on people for no reason at all. And, perception is reality. So sometimes people have a different perception of how you treated them or what happened. It's better that they don't assume and just ask you about it. Like, I recently had a sale where I had a very good rapport with the lead agent. She had a team member that was helping her. The team member came for the final walkthrough. My thought, focus, and obligation is to the client, the buyers I was working with. She was there, but she wasn't foremost. I said hello and talked to my people. And then after that, it's all about the people I'm working with. She felt offended that I didn't somehow communicate with her more, include her in the conversation. But technically, this is confidential conversation between me and the buyer.
She really shouldn't have been there.
Yeah, and she was very, very new, and if she really shouldn't have been there, right? But if she had to be there at the owner's request, and that happens, give space to the people so they have that private time and conversation so you don't feel like you're left out. But yeah, so she made mention to the higher up agent. I said, I absolutely don't know what you're talking about, but I'm happy to talk to her and work through it. And then she, in talking with her a little more, found like I did nothing wrong, and she just personally misunderstood and got offended. So I would say don't get offended. Everybody's just trying to do the best that they can, and so try to tamp down the noise. Don't get offended. Don't think about it too much and be sensitive about it. It's just business at the end of the day, and just be professional always, because these relationships with agents, they're important, because after that sale goes away, we are all still in this business, building bridges between us, bridges of communication, and respecting one another and looking forward to the next transaction with you. If they have a horrible transaction with you and you have a listing, maybe they're going to tell their people, hey, you may not want to work over there. That's going to be a problem. Go over here and work with 100%. This house.
We do it to builders all the time,
agents,
right?
Yeah, because they're, this sounds crazy or whatever. So it is a networking business. There is your reputation precedes you in this business, and I think it's very important to have professionalism with the agents as well. And again, you're not representing the other agents, you're not doing anything in their best interest, but you should have a professional relationship with these agents you're going to be working with over and over again.
Right.
Right. So.
Well, obviously in 2021, when you had multiple offers going on, when an offer comes from an agent you've worked with before, and oh man, they were really great to work with. We even had a negotiation, but they're really cool about it, and we worked it out. I'm going to put theirs on top. I'm going to recommend theirs.
You might, because that may be best for your seller. If you're working with somebody who's unhinged, that goes to every point of their business, you know, and so you might, I think you're doing a better job for your seller picking the best contract. But there is some consideration of, that agent, she's great. I've worked with her. She doesn't work with unqualified buyers. She knows her stuff. And you could give a higher level of assurance that that person
it's going to make the transaction happen.
And if all things are equal, both contracts are the same basically, and one person has a really bad reputation out there, is not honest or is a hothead or whatever, and that deal has a higher risk of falling through, you might share that with your owner and let them decide, based on your experience. So I think, building bridges and networking in this business and being respectful to people is super important.
I'm asking this quick because when I had Kim Knapp on, she said this really clear, talking about, getting in the negotiations. How do you set up and set up's not really the right word, but foreshadow for your client, buyer or seller, that negotiations are going to happen. And, sometimes, not to react so quickly, even talking to the agents who might be listening, don't be so quick to react. Take a few minutes, step back.
Right.
When, hey, we got a problem with, hey, the insurance company's, the water heater needs to be replaced.
Right.
Okay, all right, dude, that's a couple-hour job. It's done. Yeah, there's some money involved. How do we get around it and not to explode? Or if you're properly prepping your seller that, hey, your water heater's a little old, they may ask for that to be replaced. Tell us some of the things that you've learned over time to prepare your client, so knowing that a curveball may come and you can tell them where to put the bat, so to speak, so that they're not going to get emotional because you've already foreshadowed these type of things.
Right. I mean, if you sit down for a listing appointment, it's a beautiful house, it's well kept. One of the comments I'll make is, your house is beautiful, it's clearly well kept, but don't be surprised or offended when an inspection is done and they find something. Because you're not all over your roof, you're not in your attic, you're not looking at the things they're looking for. So when you think that nothing is going to come up, it probably will. There'll probably be some things. So be prepared for that. So that would be something that would help a seller that is, there's so much pride in their home and they do go out of their way to take care of it. And even those perfect homes, you go through an inspection, they're going to feel like their house was picked apart and this inspector's terrible and all these things because you didn't prepare them that no matter how perfect your house is, they will find some things. Try not to get offended. We'll work through it. We'll negotiate that process and see what makes sense at the time. So it's just preparing them for the common things that will come. There's always things we don't know are coming, but these are some common things that will come. You can also prepare them when you notice something about the house and feedback's going to come right back to it. Maybe they back up to a busy road. Hey, be prepared. So many out of 10 people.
It is what it is. The road ain't moving.
We priced it because we know you're backing to a road, and they didn't get this house without the road for this price. So you have to. You don't want them to get offended. It's really important for sellers to get feedback, but some of them get so upset and offended they don't even want to hear it. But talk to them about that up front, it's important. It's the map to the contract. If people are giving you feedback, you might be able to make slight corrections that will get you to the contract faster.
Do you do pre-listing inspections? I'm a pre-listing inspection fan.
I think it's a great idea, and we do recommend it for all of our listings to do a pre-listing inspection because you could knock out a lot of things, especially with older homes. You could knock out a lot of things because buyers, especially in this market, they're nervous, they're fickle, and it would be better to take, if you've got an inspection, 20 things are on there. Maybe you can knock off those 20 or 10 or 15, so when they do their inspection, they find nothing or they find 5 things. And that makes them feel better about the house. But inspections can scare buyers away. And the items that come up can be so basic. It's not about that. It's about the number of items that freaks them out. So if you could just get that number down to something.
I think it's like buying insurance. Can I pay a few $100s to ensure that this sale's going to make it through the inspection period and the closing? You're really hopefully getting 90% of what may come up. And then if you're honest, say, yeah, we did an inspection and these are the things came up and we fixed them all. I mean, what are they going to say?
You could do that, or you could just not have those show up on the inspection, which is what ultimately they're hoping for. They're hoping that the house is in good shape and they're not going to find something that's just scary. But like I said, it's the number of items. These items could be $50 repairs, $100 repair. They could all add up to under $2,000. But you have 35 items on there, and now they're like, oh my God, the house is falling apart. It's not.
Exactly.
I mean, you just have to look at what the items are.
Well, I'm sure you had it. There was a period of time there because the inventory was so low, people were making offers, just satisfying with a home that they didn't really want, but there was nothing else out there. So they made an offer on it. You get in process, and all of a sudden a home that they really wanted in a neighborhood they really wanted to get into now came up. So now they find a reason to get out of this deal. And the inspection's obviously the easiest one.
It is. And you may not be able to stop that if that's their thought process that they really wanted that other house. They're just going to go on to it. It may not be the inspection that killed that deal. It might just be the reason they could get their head around getting out of it. But yeah, to your point, less items, it's going to be helpful.
So one of the biggest challenges I think agents have, and I'm sure you've seen it, you've gone through it, you've built a team now, and so I want to talk a little bit of the evolution of your team. So when did you get to a point to where you had so much business, you realized you had to get help?
2020.
2020. Okay.
Yeah. So, and then the thing about teams is they rise and fall with how busy it is. If you can't give them enough business, they can't get enough business, obviously they don't stay. And if the market's upswing, you could keep them busy and have several agents. We call them buyer's agents, but they can list and sell, so they're really just agents on a team. So 2020 made me think I cannot do all of it. And then, there's leads in certain areas and price points that you may not want to do or have the time to do in those moments of like it's crazy and you don't want to lose that business or refer it to someone else. So it'd be nice to have agents on the team. So then it starts making sense. But, my team aspect is just not about like adding agents. I don't want to have 5, 10, 15, 20 agents that I just to have an agent. It doesn't make sense. It takes a lot of time and energy to bring them up and to train them right. You want longevity with those people.
Because they got to represent you. It's the Raymer team. It's on there.
And plus, if you're going to invest that kind of time and energy, you want to make sure it's somebody you think is going to stick around and, be there for the, the rewards that come later just from working with you longer. But my team is a lot of admins too. So I have a transaction coordinator who handles everything from contract to closing. I have people that specialize in media post and marketing. I have people that specialize in contracts and office work. And when I say contracts, just making sure everything gets emailed, set up for e-sign. I mean, I do the contracts, but they're facilitating the process by setting up the e-signs and things like that. So, I have an office manager, and then she helps new agents if they need something in the technology realm. And, so a couple admins, an admin manager, a closing coordinator, agents that, work in the field. But it's not all about just agents. It's about having a quality team of people, admins, to make sure the ball doesn't get dropped, more eyes on the situation to make sure things run perfectly until closing. And then after closing, you want to stay in touch with those people, service after the sale. That also helps create the longevity. But so as far as the team part of it goes, yes, I have different people that I pay to.
What is if there was, of all the things that an agent does, and obviously your assistants do, if there is one thing that you could do all day in real estate, and that was all you had to do to be successful, don't even worry about what's going on, what would that be?
I guess, listings has always been the name of the game in our business, as far as you need to have inventory. Inventory brings buyers, inventory brings sales. So, but I would never just be an agent who's a listing agent.
Right.
And sellers are savvy about
But that's
that.
what you love. Do you like the listing appointment? You like
I love that.
presenting their home,
I
getting
love
the
being in competition with other agents and then winning their trust and getting that deal. It just feels good. But owners will ask you, are you a listing agent or a selling agent? And my business kind of comes straight down the line every year, 50-50. Half of my sales are I'm the listing agent, the other half I'm the buyer's agent. So about 50-50. But I love sitting down at the table with the owners and getting to know them and talk with them and meet their kids and their dog. And, I just love it. I love that social one-on-one aspect. Like I'm shy, like if you put me up, in front of a TV, in front of people, behind a podium, I'm shy in that, but I'm great, like, at the table. I love talking I could take an hour and appointment.
The science of strategizing how to sell it, is that a high for you? Do you like...
Sure.
Yeah, trying to figure, obviously, when you're successful, you're like, I want to do this again.
Well, you're excited about it, too, because you feel like you got the best of what's out there, and you just want to share it with them so they see and understand, and then they're excited about it, but... like I was saying, it's about that conversation and communication, getting to know what they need. And how do you know that? You listen to them. Let them talk more.
So, not that I didn't want to ask that question, but I'm leading into this part to our listeners for us. That's what you love to do, and you're very good at it. Yeah. You could run with the best of them, going out on those listing appointments because you're passionate about it. When you get up in the morning and have a listing appointment, obviously you're like, you're excited and you get prepped. The other part, not that you don't like it, like the transaction coordinating or, making sure your CRM's up to date and doing those marketing and those follow-ups and staying on those schedules. Obviously you probably got to a point where, I'm going to too many appointments. I don't have time in the day to do these other stuff that I know I need to do to make sure the appointments keep coming.
Correct.
So to those agents out there right now and I think there's a lid, I talk about this often, somewhere between, I think in this area, 6 and 9 million, someone's pretty much going to get maxed out if they're doing everything themselves.
Yeah,
They're
true.
going to start giving up on the follow-ups because they're too busy going out to the listing appointments. But there's just going to become a point where all of a sudden, well, man, I haven't done enough follow-ups and my appointments are going down because, unless something changes the market and it gets hot again or something. So what is your advice? What would you do, knowing what you know, the business, if someone's at that point and they really are starting to slough off on or not, pay attention to those other things, what would a transaction coordinator be the first hire, an assistant? What would you do if you were in that spot?
I think a transaction coordinator, because you pay them when you make money. They're not a salaried position.
Mm-hmm.
They're per transaction position. So you pay them when you make money and they work to help you make money.
Right.
And it can take a ton of admin work off your plate just having a TC. And, a lot of top agents have them. So like if I add an agent, they have the access and benefit of that too.
Mm-hmm.
Some offices have a TC for the whole office and you'll still pay for them. But yeah, adding a TC is instrumental. And then when your business warrants it, pick up a salaried person to help you with all the admin stuff that really doesn't make you money, because it's so unique that you're the only one that can do it, right? Like that's not unique. That's the repetition part of our business. You can hire someone and then you're out there doing the things that do make the money that you can't reproduce, like you being on the appointment.
Right.
So, as your business
And spending the
grows.
time and not being rushed. Oh, I got to get back and do that, and you cut off and not spend it. I've heard some. Well, actually, I brought up Kim Knapp earlier. I think she, if I recall correctly, she said an assistant. But when you think about it, the transaction coordinator is delivering your service. It's at the moment in time when everything is very important. You're in the middle. You want everything to go smooth in a transaction because that is your reputation. That hopefully when the transaction's over, they go like, "Man, that was great."
Right.
Call Maria and whoever a transaction coordinator. They need to do your deal for you because they're just great. Where the follow-up person, if they sent the email today or tomorrow, not really going to make or break your reputation. Now
Right.
they need to send it eventually, right? To keep the follow-up. But that transaction coordinator is an extension of you and obviously the high level of service.
Right. Right, and follow-up now can be done on your CRM. Like you put everybody on campaigns, it's all automatic, text message, emails, whatever, communication for, just staying in touch with your past clients.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have the right technology, you don't have to hire an admin, you just have to use your contact management system. It's going to cover all that for you,
Right.
Until you need an admin. But I wouldn't add a salaried position to a team unless you had the business and the money to support that.
One of the challenges out there, I imagine you've probably had multiple TCs over the years. So have you had the same
few.
one? You've had a few.
I've had a few, only people stick with me, I stick with them.
Yeah. Oh, so the complaint, I guess I've heard of, for lack of better terms, or the challenge that some people have, they always want to find the half glass empty, is, so-and-so had a transaction coordinator and they're really poor. What are some of the important things when you're interviewing, considering bringing on a transaction coordinator? What are some important ground rules that you need to set to make sure the interaction, how they service your clients, is to your satisfaction?
I think you need to make sure they don't replace you completely in the transaction by doing things that would be more of an agent responsibility. I think it's really important to be very engaged in the communication, follow up still with your customers, even though you have a transaction coordinator. And then for the transaction coordinator side, you have to constantly make sure they're not doing too much out of their, getting out of the bounds of what's their role, and somehow accidentally getting you out of that circle of communication or building some expectation or some conversation with the client that you didn't sanction or know about, or so it's really important when you want to delegate, but you don't want to just say, here, take it all. And you should always be monitoring all steps of what's happening there. And I think people, the minute they think they're paying somebody for something, it's like, okay, do everything, I don't want to be bothered. But you can't do that, because then I think mistakes will happen, and you're the one they're going to blame. They're
Right.
not going to blame your TC.
No.
They're going to, somehow that transaction in their mind didn't go well. It doesn't matter if your TC made a mistake. They're looking at you.
Right.
You let it happen. So try to be involved with everything in your business, whether it's your admins, your TC. You should be involved. You can't check out.
Yeah.
You got to be there. You got to be involved.
I think it was Carrie Carpenter said it well, it really gave me an insight on the transaction coordinator. And I've had some transaction coordinator companies on, ladies that run a team of transaction coordinators. That's what they do. And every agent sees the transaction coordinator a little differently.
Yeah.
You know, what they want them to do, whether not communicate or communicate fully. Carrie, for example, I always remember this when I had her on, she liked getting long text messages in the morning updating her on all her files. I'm like, I wouldn't like that, but you have to set those standards because that transaction coordinator is not only working with you, they're working with other agents. Because you know, they can handle a lot more deals because they're sitting in a chair in a cube or whatever, behind a computer. To set, even setting, you know, how are we going to communicate with ourselves? So what you see their role as versus another agent they may be working with may have a totally different aspect.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's your job to train them, you know, how you want your business to go. And for me, I like emails, email correspondence, everybody in the loop. They're easy to go back to and track. If there's a he said, she said situation, you're in the loop on everything if you're being copied. If they start floating off with text messages directly to your client and you're not involved in those text messages, you don't know what's happening. And then to be copied in on every single text message, especially when it's busy, can just constantly...
They get lost.
Yeah, it blows up your phone. You can't keep track. You get lost. I don't like that. I like everything on email, all communications through with the client.
I agree. What was that? I was going to ask you another transaction, but anyway, let's talk. We came in before we turned the cameras on. This is for those who may listen, you know, if they're listening to this month, it's October. Right? Yeah. October 3rd, 2025. We talked a little bit about the market. You talk about the market a lot when you're down on your TV set, giving what's going on. My personal feeling is, you know, the best time to buy real estate was like 2 years ago. So if you don't have real estate now, you need to get in the game. Right? Because 2 years from now, you're going to be looking back, oh man, I should have bought back in 25.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What are some of the things that you're sharing regularly down there from your standpoint, from the market conditions here in Northeast Florida? And what are you excited about in 26?
I mean, I think right now it's a great time to be a buyer. It's a buyer's market. There's inventory, there's negotiating room. The owners have gotten better about price reductions. We're seeing more of the motivated sellers on the market versus people, let me just see what I can get from my house.
They've come to the 11th hour of things like, hey, we got to go. Yeah.
So to be a buyer right now, I think is a great thing. And, you know, I always say you date the rate, you marry the house. So like, don't get freaked out about a higher interest rate than you're comfortable with now if you can afford it and the bank knows if you can or you won't qualify. And if it's a payment you're comfortable with, buy the house. And then when the rate comes back down, refinance it. That is not the permanent situation. The house is. And, you know, even in a slower market, there's still modest appreciation. So whether it's 1%, 3%, 5%, that's all in the modest realm of appreciation. A year from now, you're going to be paying 1%, 3%, 5% more. So what did you do by waiting? Nothing really. Waiting is just going to cost you more money down the road. And like I said, when the rate does come down, you'll be able to refinance and get in a better position with your house. What I'm excited about in 2026 is I believe we're going to see inflation continue to come down from its highs of 2 and 3 years ago. And along with that, the rate comes down. I mean, there's a direct correlation with mortgage rates, as you know, and inflation. So I believe that'll happen. And I think that's the thing we're looking forward to. But don't wait to buy the house. Buy the house when you have more negotiating room. And then later on, if and when that rate does come down, which is looking like it will based on some of the economic indicators, I think we're all agreeing about that anyway. And then just do the refinance. But I think that 2026 could be pretty competitive because if those rates do go down and, you know, say we see low fives, our inventory is not at 6 months anymore. It was at the beginning of the year. It was building up to over 6 months, which, you know, 4 to 6 months, a normal healthy market. That's not unusual. Well, now it's getting down to 3.5, 4 months. So the inventory is dwindling. So if the rates come down, I mean, there's going to be, you know, competition.
Yeah, I think you and I agree.
Jumping back in. And
a lot of people sitting on the sidelines. There's sellers sitting on the sidelines because they're like, oh, I got a low rate now, but I want to move over there.
Right.
And then there's going to be a point where they're going to be like, okay, it's close. We want to go.
Yeah. And not only are they a new seller in the market, that's great, but they're also a new buyer in the market. That's competition. So, you know, will we see another 2020? Probably not to that degree because there were other external factors that made that happen, right? Like it was the shutdowns and people moving out of cities, work at home environment. Oh, I could live in Florida. So there was a lot of things that won't exist. So if just great rates come into the market and the inventory is low, that is going to be enough to fuel competitive offers again.
Yeah. And you stay in touch with the heartbeat of Northeast Florida too. We kind of have I think it's a unique bubble here. They are bringing in high quality jobs. I mean, Jacksonville's become a financial hub from that standpoint. And obviously you need people to service that. The blue collar's got to service the white collar, type of thing going on. And I think they just signed a big deal over on Cecil Field to build these new, I forget how many there were a lot, but the airplane manufacturers coming in to build these private jets over there, which obviously means there's going to be high-end jobs and a good, just like having Northrop Grumman down in St. Augustine is a thing. We just have this unique area, let alone the lifestyle.
Right. We have a great lifestyle here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love Northeast Florida. So much to offer. St. Augustine's right down the road, oldest city in America, and just all the little pocket areas. That's what I love about it. I love like Riverside and San Marco and all these different places that you could go and you feel like you've gone away for the weekend because they're so different. Yeah. And we have all that right here. We have those walkable areas, like at the beach by Neptune Beach where you park your car and there's all the shops and the coffee and the restaurants and the beaches there. And we have like multiple pocket areas like that. And it's a great place to live. Yeah. I love Northeast Florida. I travel a ton. And, and when I say a ton, I don't mean all in the same year. I mean, in my life, I have been all over the U.S. I've been other places. I always love coming back home. I think Northeast Florida is a really fabulous place to live and raise a family. I just am sold on it. And that's why I've been here so long.
Maria, I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
It's been a great conversation. Yeah. Hopefully your fans will see this. We'll get this out on YouTube. It'll go out on the podcast world on Monday, the 6th there. But I really appreciate finally getting you in the studio.
It's been great. Thank you so much.
This may be it for today's episode of Real Estate Excellence, but we both know your pursuit of excellence doesn't stop here. To connect with the best of the best and really take your skills to the next level, join our community by visiting TracyHayesPodcast.com, where you'll meet more like-minded individuals looking to expand their inner circle and their personal experience. That's available at TracyHayesPodcast.com.